Many people have been led to believe that, although the Bible is full of interesting stories, its history is mythological and made up, with no archaeological support. This series is dedicated to those who need help dislodging that dubious claim. Last video, we found someone who seemed to have come at the beginning stage of a Semitic settlement in the northern Nile Delta, who also seemed to have a high rank and a career remarkably like Joseph found in the Bible. The vizier to the pharaohs of plenty and famine, named Anku, becomes a folk hero with granaries and Semitic slaves named after him. His two sons succeed him in office as the beginning of a period in Egypt's history where the role of vizier cast a large shadow over the role of pharaoh. Egyptologists have long argued that the short reigns of early 13th dynasty pharaohs was because of the considerable power and influence of the royal viziers. This Asiatic Egyptian family line, beginning with Anku and his sons, basically became heavyweight power brokers. Some of the pharaohs who served in this time were themselves Asiatics, possibly Semitic, such as Kenjer and, oh man, I'm going to mess this up, Amusahornedjheriotef. It's also a possibility that Anku's eldest son, Reseneb, served as king, succeeding Sebekhotep II and ruling for a brief 4 months. A few other viziers later become pharaohs. But this didn't last forever. In the mid-13th dynasty, a new sub-dynasty of native Egyptian pharaohs comes to power, possibly after a power struggle and desire for native Egyptians to rule their own kingdom. The implication then would be that if Anku and his two sons really do match up with Joseph and his two sons in the Bible, then these native rulers from Luxor who seized the throne could be good candidates for the pharaohs who did not remember Joseph and his service to Egypt. It would be around this time that we would look for a Moses figure. But where to start? As it happens, there was a Jewish historian named Artapanus of Alexandria who wrote a history of the Jews called Concerning the Jews. He wrote sometime in the 2nd century BC, before the Library of Alexandria would have lost many texts to fires. A surviving fragment of his book explains that Moses' step-grandfather was the pharaoh Palmanethes, and that Palmanethes' daughter Maris was the one who rescued and adopted baby Moses. Artapanus also writes that the ruler in southern Egypt was Khenofres, and that Khenofres married Princess Maris. This is really nice because, although Palmanethes is really hard to identify, only one Egyptian ruler took Khenofres as a royal coronation name, the pharaoh that we refer to as Sebekhotep IV. He rules later in the 13th dynasty, a few generations after the vizier Anku dies and native pharaohs come to power. With access to files in the Library of Alexandria and correctly placing a pharaoh in the 13th dynasty, scholars believe that Artapanus' record of Moses' life is at the very least based on historical events, even if it has fantastical elements in it. He records Moses as being a young general in the pharaoh's army. He played an important role in fighting back against an invasion of Cushites from the south when it appeared that they were about to overtake the whole Egyptian kingdom. In 2003, a team led by Vivian Davies of the British Museum was cleaning soot from a doorway in the tomb of a 15th century governor, and they discovered an inscription with a story about Cushites invading from the south en masse, threatening the whole kingdom. And there's also a stone at Karnak that records a war against Cushites during the reign of Sebekhotep IV, who would be Moses' adopted father. Ancient historian Josephus writes, he came upon the Ethiopians before they expected him, and, joining battle with them, he beat them and deprived them of the hopes that they had of success against the Egyptians, and he went on in overthrowing their cities. As part of a peace deal with Cush, Josephus describes how Tharbis, the daughter of the Ethiopian king, was given in marriage to Prince Moses upon the delivering up of their capital city. And this would also explain, by the way, how Moses would have had a Cushite wife, in addition to his wife Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro the Midianite. So Artapanus writes about how Moses was a successful general and he became wildly popular, and that Pharaoh Khenofres became jealous and pressured Moses to be removed. This makes sense since he wasn't of royal bloodline, but he was his wife's adopted son. Josephus also writes, hereupon it was that Thermuthis imposed this name Moses upon him from what had happened when he was put into the river. For the Egyptians call water by the name of Mo, and such as are saved out of it by the name Uses. So by putting these words together, they imposed this name upon him. Also, on a stone in Wadi Hamamat, the first of Khenafre's Sebekotep's the fourth sons is mentioned, and they call him Sebekotep Mio, Mio being his pet name. But even though Mio is mentioned as the first son of Sebekotep IV, the record shows that this is not the son who succeeds him as ruler. So far, to summarize, an ancient historian with access to Alexandria's records before the fires identifies Khenafre's Sebekotep IV as Moses' adopted father by marriage, and that Moses was a successful general in Egypt in the fight against Cush, resulting in victory for Egypt, fame for Moses, and a Cushite bride. This matches well with inscriptions describing war with Cush during the reign of Sebekotep IV, and also fits well chronologically with the timeline of when to find biblical characters once you start relying on new timing that's based on ancient religious references to the night sky and astronomy software. And over time, his welcome grows cold in the royal household, and he eventually gets pressured to leave. And all of what I've told you came from sources outside the Bible, yet it does seem to fit well with what we are told in the Bible about Joseph's rise to power, favor in Egypt for a while, pharaohs coming along who don't remember Joseph, Moses being adopted by a royal princess, being raised in Pharaoh's household, and growing in favor, but eventually having to leave. I hope this was interesting and encouraging to you. But remember, the question is not, can we prove everything in the Bible? The question rather should be, where there is archaeological evidence, does it in fact support biblical witness or not? Thank you for watching.